Yo, what's going on, guys? It's gmeiners here. I have said time and time again that glaives are honestly pretty terrible, especially for endgame content, but with season 19 we got a major change that now makes these an S tier option to run. Last season, Glaives got a change where they started working with certain melee-based exotics like Karnstein's armlets and necrotic grips, but the main exotics that we use for melees are the ones that provide the massive damage increases, which have been known to kind of break the game with certain builds, and as of this season, Glaives now also work with these. More specifically, Glaives are now able to receive the increases in melee damage that are provided from Synthoceps, Wormgod's Caress, and Winter's Guile. Wormgods and Winter's Guile were both nerfed pretty heavily, but now that they stack with Glaives that deal pretty substantial melee damage on their own, these exotics are kinda back on top. I did want to give a quick shout out to that one guy, Kinda, who made a video testing out Glaives with Synthoceps against the Ogre in Grasp of Avarice. I honestly didn't even realize this change was made until seeing his original video, so if you guys do want to see this actually used against a boss, that video will be linked below. But in this video, I wanted to go over how to properly stack the damage with Glaives, then test out the DPS this can deal, and then also show it off against some harder content. If you guys do enjoy this video and you want to see more like them, make sure to drop a like and sub down below. Subbing is 100% free, it helps me out a ton, and you can always unsub later. Starting off against this Lost Sector boss, we hit for 8,704 damage per melee with nothing stacking, so this is just our base damage, and we are running boss spec. For Glaives, one of the new best perks you can run is going to be Close to Melee, which is a 30% damage increase. Just by getting a kill with the Glaive projectile, this increases Glaive melee damage for 10 seconds, but as you deal more damage, this keeps adding time to the counter. So you can get one kill, then continue to use this endlessly. With Close to Melee, we are now hitting for 11,315 damage per melee. Also keep in mind, perks like Surrounded are going to let us hit even harder than this, but they just require more enemies to be around, and for these enemies to stay around and not accidentally get killed by a melee that tracks to them. Then with an exotic like Synthoceps, which I was using here, we get an additional 200% increase in our melee damage, which is going to proc anytime we are surrounded. Surrounded for Synthos means that we are near 3 or more enemies, and this is going to last for 8 seconds, so this does allow us to leave the surrounded state for a bit while maintaining the damage increase, which means we are now able to hit for 33,945 damage per melee attack we use. It is also extremely important to mention that using a buff like Radiant does in fact stack with Glaives, because the melee damage here does technically count as weapon damage, which is great because this is another 25% damage increase that this setup has access to, which most melee builds don't. Now that I have showed off everything stacking, using the largest numbers possible for continuous damage, we would have our base damage multiplied by 1.47 if using Enhanced Surrounded, then increased by another 3x for Synthos. Wormgods and Winter's Guile are really only great for ad clear in my opinion, along with hitting enemies super hard once or twice. Unless you use them against a boss with very large amounts of ads that you can keep refreshing on, I don't think they're great for continuous damage. And I'm also not including a buff or debuff here, because when I typically do damage testing for weapons, it's assumed that buffs and debuffs always scale and work properly. So I don't include these to give the most basic damage numbers possible. And also, after testing, Well of Ions does not stack with Glaives either. From our base damage, we would now hit for a total of 38,384 damage per melee swing with this setup. And then testing how long it takes to swing, I used this against Kali and swung a total of 31 times. This was done in 16.2 seconds, which if you add up all the melee attacks, assuming we use this setup, as I just went over, this would be 1.19 million total damage, which would come out to 73.4 thousand damage per second, making it better than a God Roll Cataclysmic with 4 times the charm and bait and switch, which is around 72,000 damage per second across just 2 mags. You can make the argument that this could get substantially better if you maintain the buff from Winter's Guile or Wormgods while dealing damage, but it could also substantially get worse if you can't continue to maintain the buff from Synthos from enemies that are surrounding you. So I think all in all, this kind of goes both ways, but anytime you are in a setting for killing ads, it murders. And once again, keep in mind, this isn't using heavy ammo, it's not using special ammo or even primary. All you're doing is poking things with a stick, which you can do infinitely. This setup also does really good damage against champions, and we also have passive aggressive guard this season for extra damage reduction. I think it's safe to say there are going to be some pretty solid builds using these exotics along with Glaives now that should be able to hang in endgame content. Not sure if they're always going to be better than using base melee builds on Titan and Hunter, but for Warlocks at least, with something like Devour, this should feel super strong. Let me know what you guys think of Glaives now in the comments below. I will definitely be putting out some new builds using these things in the next few days. We have also been running Spire of the Watcher speedruns live over on my Twitch. If you guys are interested in watching us, a link to that and my Discord server are both in the description below. Anyways, that's all for this video, guys. As always, have a good one. Peace.